Welcome to Horticulture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture.
Greetings. Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, good people.
How are you all doing?
Very
Good.
well, very well. The weather here in Kentucky, as of the date of this recording, is supposed to be getting a little cooler, and I'm kind of glad of it. Kind of glad of it.
Yeah, I got back from Alabama not too long ago, and before
Nice
I
and cool
went,
in Alabama.
well, no,
Not really. Yeah.
but before I went, it got really terribly hot and humid here, and so I had a little acclimation time
Gotcha.
to get up to speed with that heat and humidity. But we have a guest with us today, and I'll let her introduce herself. And her experience this summer is what we're going to be focusing on a little bit during this episode. But Macy, you mind saying hello to the folks at home?
So as Brett said, I'm Macy Thompson. I'm the current fellow summer with the CCD out at UK. This summer I've just kind of been traveling and seeing what the horticulture industry has.
Awesome. And I think, by way of intro, I wanted you to share with us something that I think you shared with Jessica, which is, can you give us the thumbnail on the Miss Hereford?
Yes.
Is that
no! You
I'm
just
sorry,
brought it
I
up
shared
right
it.
off.
That is
Right
fine.
off.
I was fortunate enough to serve as the Kentucky Hereford Queen for the
Hereford Queen.
2023-2024 year for the Kentucky Hereford Association. So I was an advocate. I had a crown and sash, and I went to cattle shows and wore a crown and sash around.
That's awesome. So for the people who are mostly plant nerds who listen to this channel or listen to this these podcasts, Hereford is a breed of cattle, and this was associated with like the Hereford, I don't know what you call it, society or Hereford Association.
Yeah, so it's just a breed of beef cattle, and it's very popular in the state of Kentucky. And the Kentucky Hereford Association is kind of what sponsored that. So it's kind of like the Kentucky Horticulture Council and stuff like that.
Have you all ever been crowned anything of any sort?
Not on purpose. No.
I was prom queen, but
I was
really.
just going to say that you were given prom queen.
What?
Did you tell?
I was going to say,
how did that happen? I know. I was just as shocked.
I thought you won all the sports accolades, but I didn't realize you were also prom queen, overachieving. Yeah.
Showing she has range. And speaking of which, the voice that you're hearing now, not right now, which is me, Brett, but is the voice of Jessica Besson, who has joined as a permanent host. So you know from recent episodes that Josh Knight has moved on in his professional career upward toward the great north of Vermont. And Alexis couldn't join us today, but Jessica is now with one of our permanent hosts of horticulture.
Yeah, I'm excited, and thank you guys for having me back on
here.
He
has no idea what she has signed up for, I don't think.
Right.
And can you remind us like the vantage point from which you're joining this, both in your role in extension, but also some of your experience across your life?
Yeah, so I've actually this next week I've been a county extension agent in Mercer County for 10 years, which is kind of hard to believe.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So horticulture agent, I have an undergrad in horticulture and a master's in entomology. So I am the local bug lady around the office. I've actually done a lot of youth insect programs. We had an insect club for a while going on here at the office. But otherwise, I grew up on a farm, just like kind of Macy. I grew up with beef cattle and that kind of production, but moved into horticulture. And my husband and I grow vegetables, and he does farmers markets. And we actually met at the UK Horticulture Research Farm. So, but vegetables, we still have cattle and bees. We do a lot of beekeeping and stuff like that. So I have a little bit of, dabble in a little bit of all different areas in horticulture and traditional ag.
Yeah, you can see why we're very lucky that she agreed to join us on the podcast. It's tons of different experiences, and so is the youth insect club. That's for nymphs and pupa.
Right?
Is
Oh, I
it?
love that.
Nice.
I should advertise it that way and see if
They're human youths
yes,
learning about
yeah.
insects. I understand.
It's
Got it.
the immature stage. Yeah.
Immature
I'm still in that
humans.
stage, it appears.
I
You
am
could
too. I
join. We're
exist
getting
in-
ready to start back up. Now the school year is starting.
Very cool.
It is very cool.
So Ray, you said you haven't been crowned anything?
No, I don't think I have any accolades in the way of formal titles such as that. So I don't
I
think
don't either.
so. I mean, I'm kind of blanked on that. Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
But
maybe that's that goes on our 2025 vision board for ourselves. Is like, let's claim a title.
I want a title.
Yeah, we had to be kings of something because both of these two have been queens of something.
I
So
know.
we have
I
to
feel
shoot
like
for
I'm
that.
underachieving right now.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm underachieving. So yeah, that's so
But-
I'm
cool.
sure there's something out there.
Oh, there's something out there.
Yeah.
I'm going to be it. I'm going to be the guy in something. I'm going to be the guy in
You're
something.
going to be the guy.
I'll be the dude.
guy.
I'm going to be the dude.
Well, today we wanted to. So I've had the privilege of this summer working with Macy some on this. She mentioned the CCD, Center for Crop Diversification Fellowship, which was sponsored by the Kentucky Horticulture Council to give an undergraduate student a chance to engage in some aspect of the horticulture industry. And Macy's accomplished a whole lot this summer and has had some different experiences. And we just wanted to get her on here to share. Macy, I mean, do you have any like overall impressions of the stuff that you've seen this summer, or any particular part of the experience that jumped out at you as being really interesting or unexpected or something like that?
Yeah, I think my favorite part, my favorite part of the summer was probably just being able to go to farmers markets every single week. That was so much fun. We have farmers markets back at home in Brett County where I'm from, but we never really went to them very often. So whenever I got to go this summer, I got to meet so many people and so many people that I still know and that I still talk to. I'm not finished yet, but I keep in contact with them. I'm able to see how their production process works, how their marketing plans work, and all of that fun stuff. I would say that was probably my favorite part, but overall, this summer has been incredibly enjoyable, and working with the CCD team has been great. Yeah.
So what kind of stuff are you getting into at farmers
So
markets?
I go around and I do price reporting. So essentially, I have a sheet that has all the different types of produce and goods that we need prices for, because the CCD puts together a 3-year spreadsheet that kind of just shows all the different prices for farmers markets over the years. And so I go around to every single vendor and I get to talk to them, and I get to just look at their produce, have a good conversation with them, and then see what their prices are for that week.
And I can tell you, as somebody for working in my horticulture agent position, working with growers and personal wise, that is so important. Like, I can't tell you how many vendors, look at that document and base their prices and stuff off of that. And it's a good starting point for people who are like, who have no idea what to charge when they start going to a market. So I'm glad you enjoy doing that, and it's really appreciated.
Yeah, I never, coming from a beef cattle operation, I never realized that like what I'm doing now is a thing, and like what the CCD does and how much they input into the horticulture industry and the ag industry as a whole. But I kind of really started to realize it whenever I was at a market and and all of a sudden, like one week, all of these growers are just starting to ask me like, what are the prices for this week? Like, what's going on? And then I realized like, oh, it's getting really hot in Kentucky and a lot of stuff's not growing very well. So I'm realizing how important what I was doing was really cool for me in that moment, but just seeing how much they depended on that was something I never understood.
Yeah, the world of horticulture, but also just of direct marketing in general, it's so decentralized and spread out, and there's uniqueness to it. And you've seen that with the way that people do units. One week they'll sell tomatoes by the pound, the next by the quart, the next by the heaping handful, or I don't know what the unit is sometimes, but I think it's we've worked to do that for a long time to provide that information, and there's been other places have kind of joined in and doing that as well across the country. But it is a really unique market to provide information for. And it's also, like you said, it's cool to be able to walk around and you like say, oh, this is what I'm working on. And someone has recognition of like, oh yeah, we use those or we look at those. It's a pretty neat thing. You all have a market going in Mercer County, Jessica?
We do. We have a market. They are starting to grow, and they're very fortunate that they actually have a building that they can set up in. So they set up in a building on Saturdays, but then they've kind of moved their midweek market downtown on our main street to try to pull in some different foot traffic that way. But I know they use those price reports because I've often shared them with them multiple times.
I'll make sure to share the market reports, which I think are incredibly valuable with especially all of our new members. But I mean, at each of our annual meeting, if there's been a significant update in those reports, and I push those at the annual meeting that we have every year in the early spring. And I also give out the website that you guys do because those are really great. And we've talked about on the podcast before that it's not an exact formula, but it's a great guideline to get some overviews of things like price trends. And it's even great that there's so many markets included in those price reports from across the state. So it's a good snapshot. That's good work, Macy. Yeah. That's neat that you got to be involved in that with the markets. Pretty cool.
Did you have one that you enjoyed like more than the others? Was there one that had like some unique events going on or anything when you were visiting?
I think I really just enjoyed the Sunday market the best over on Southland Drive here in Lexington. I don't know if it's because I didn't have to pay for parking there or if
Convenience,
but
yeah.
also because so many of the local markets are on Saturdays. So a lot of those local vendors from the surrounding areas also come on Sundays. So that market is really big and you have different vendors there than you do on Saturdays in downtown. So I really enjoyed that part too.
Yeah, I thought another part of your farmers market experience that was pretty cool was working on. So Macy and I sat down at the beginning of the summer, I should say, and just sort of worked out a plan for what she wanted to do this summer. And part of it was this like social media campaign of some sort. And you chose to do yours. It was related to the same market channel and community. So I'd love to hear more about your experience with that and what inspired it and what you did, I guess, and what inspired it.
Yeah. So I knew that whenever I saw that I got to do a social media campaign, that I wanted to do something that I was already going to be doing hands-on with my other tasks for my fellowship this summer. And I was like, what about farmers markets? What can I do with that? So me and Brett kind of talked it out. And I was like, well, what if we just highlight some of the vendors, some of their stories, and kind of build the bridge between the consumer and the producer on that part? And so I didn't start right off the bat because I didn't want to be like the crazy person walking up, counting their prices, and then asking them why they sell tomatoes on Sundays. Like, I didn't want to be that person. So I kind of got to go. I built my relationships with them over the course of a couple weeks. And then I just started kind of picking some of the vendors that I knew that I had conversations with earlier, and I was able to talk and just have a conversation with them. Obviously, I told them, I was like, I'm going to post this on social media if that's okay, and they were always okay with it. But I was just able to sit there and like have a conversation that was about horticulture and their story and their farm and kind of why they're doing what they're doing. And that was one of the best parts about the farmers market, was just being able to talk to those producers and hear their side. That was just something that was really special to me because I know as a beef producer, I love whenever people come and ask me questions about it. So I was just able to talk to them a lot. So There's 5 or 6 posts going out on the CCD, and it just highlights different farms and why they love selling at farmers markets and what the appeal is of it, and how the consumers kind of play a role in that part.
Well, Jessica, you've worked with vendors and also been a vendor yourself. So, what's your answer to that question? I'm curious.
About
Can you repeat the question, Macy?
yeah, can you repeat the
So
question again?
why they sell at farmers market and kind of what the appeal of it is.
I think, well, one, you're going to have customers, right? Like there's not the worry if I grow all these tomatoes, is this business, are they going to take them this week? Are they not going to take them this week? Usually at a market, you're going to have foot traffic. But now, as my husband and I have been doing this for almost 14 years, I think, doing markets, you build relationships with those customers, and there are certain people you look for every year, and there's people who look for you. And I feel like just building those relationships is another big factor in it. And just again, the foot traffic of knowing that if you're a part of a good active market, there are going to be customers that are going to be there on a regular basis to shop versus that unknown of selling wholesale or selling at some of the auctions of what you're really going to get for all that effort that you put into growing that crop. So.
I kind of heard
farmers markets. Oh, go ahead. I'm
I kind
sorry.
of heard that whenever I went. So this summer, I also got to visit farms and everything, and I was always asking, like, what are other avenues that you sell other than on farm sites and all that stuff? And the thing that I just kept on hearing was farmers markets, farmers markets, farmers markets, and that was essentially what they were saying. They knew that they were going to have people there. They knew that if the business that they had lined up didn't need it, or if the school system that they had lined up didn't need it at that point, that they always had somebody there at the farmers market, which I thought was really special for them.
Seems like that farmers markets, and I'm sure you noticed this when you go around. I mean, we can say a farmers market in Kentucky, you would make certain baseline assumptions, but did you find that every market had its own character and kind of had its own flow that you were able to visit with this summer? That's always something that's very interesting to me. And every market that I've ever worked with have been really, once you get to know the market, seems like it's been different, each one.
Yeah, I think so, 100%. The main two that I went to were the one on Southland Drive here in Lexington, and then the downtown market in Lexington. And
Mostly in Lexington,
just the difference
Yeah.
between those two is kind of crazy, just because on
Even in the same city,
on
Wow.
Saturdays, whenever I went, it was downtown. You had a lot of young people. You had a lot of people that were looking for different types of produce. Maybe they were looking for more organic things, or maybe they were looking for flowers or other non-horticulture goods at that farmer's market. But then on Sunday, you had the families and maybe more generational crowds at the farmers market looking for not only produce but meat, and essentially doing the majority of their grocery shopping at that farmers market. And I just thought that the difference between those two are very definite, but they're all both very welcoming at the same time.
Yeah, cool.
Oh.
Farmers market's pretty neat.
Yeah, there's a third one in Lexington as well, and it's also again, very welcoming, same kind of atmosphere, but totally different at the same time compared to the downtown, the Southland Drive, and then the one that's out in Hamburg. So it's pretty wild how all in the same city, how different they can still be. And I know I've heard of other agents, like in Madison County, I believe they also have like 3 markets there, and that the horticulture agent there has shared how even though they are all fairly close to each other, it's all different crowds that are attending the different markets in the same community.
Yeah, I think that's that notion of different client bases or different customer bases is sort of the defining characteristic of the market. And if you have a large enough local food consumer base, whether that be from being in a big city or just having a devoted cross section of local food consumers, you may have enough people there to support these different types of markets. Something that has a little more of a big city prepared food, maybe value added products, kind of higher dollar item stuff, more to like a farm stand or fresh produce, grower only maybe, or those types of distinctions. I think it's something we talk about all the time, is like market type and understanding what your market type is as a grower. And more often than not, talk about not wishing, like if you, no matter how much you wish that your market type was a different type of market, you wish that you had richer customers coming and spending more money. If you can plan for the things that your customers want, you're going to have less frustration in the long run, I think. Macy, you started talking a little bit about your farm visits, and I think that it probably leads into as well the some of the stuff you've explored with the writing and developing an extension publication. So maybe you just talk about the farms what you can mention, which farms you visited and what your impressions were there, and then talk a little bit about some of the extension publications or the other writing that you did. I'd love to hear more about that.
So I got to, I'll start out. At the beginning of the summer, one thing that really caught my eye whenever I was looking at my work plan for the CCD was that I got to write an extension publication. And all throughout high school and an FFA and everything that I did, we always read extension publications. So I was like, oh my goodness, why are they letting me write this? And so I decided that I wanted to do it over UPIC operations, because the more I looked into it, the less that there were about pick your own operations, especially in the state of Kentucky. And so I was talking to Brett, and he was like, yeah, that's a great starting point. Let's do it. And so I got to go to the Mulberry Farm and Stepping Stone Farm. And I met with both of those, and they were very easy to work with. They loved all the questions that I was asking. Stepping Stone Farm, they have just about everything you can think of. They have an orchard, they have berry fields, they have kids areas, everything that you kind of think of whenever that they can offer, they have. And essentially, I was talking to her about the marketing side of her operation, and she says that she just finds the people that come and ask what they want, and that's what she provides. And I think that that is really important, because I know a lot of farmers and agriculturalists, they're doing the same thing over and over and over again, because that's what they're accustomed to. But I really just loved how she was so open to being able to offer more things and being able to adapt to her customers. And same thing with the Mulberry Farm. They found that they were a grain operation, a grain and cattle operation. They had tobacco. And then whenever they needed a different source of income and they needed more income on the same amount of land, that's whenever they kind of started getting into the orchard process. And so they were able to find those ways to be able to make more income and serve more people, because now they I think that they sell their apples to Jefferson County Public Schools and then a few of their other surrounding counties around Shelbyville. So they found those markets and they found what they needed to adhere to, and that's exactly what they did. And I thought that that was really cool, especially on the UPIC side, because I know whenever we think of UPIC, it's either flowers or it's apple and pumpkin fields. And they were able to kind of make their name off of their UPIC operations. So I was able to talk to them about their management skills, which I thought were very beneficial, not only to UPIC, but also to just farming practices in general. But over the course of this summer, I've just been able to see how managing horticulture farms is so important and so decisive and intensive. And I just thought that that was really neat, because the two farms that I was able to visit this summer showed just how perseverance and determination, how far that can get you. And I thought that that was really admirable.
Yeah, Stepping Stone Farms it's an interesting story that they have this farm which has been in their family, and they developed it into this blend of kind of agritourism and event hosting, but also on-farm sales in their general store, I guess you would call it. I don't know exactly what to call it, but
Sort of, yeah.
but then they've also developed out this relationship with Reed Valley Farm, which is anyone who's been around Kentucky agriculture for a while is maybe familiar with that. One of our OG UPIC and horticulture direct to consumer operations, and the Mr. and Mrs. Reed decided they wanted to kind of get out of that business, but wanted it to try to remain in farming if possible. And they have, obviously, with fruit, it's a perennial crop, and so they were able to figure out a way to transition management and ownership. I think, I don't know all the details of that, to the folks at Stepping Stone, which is just not that far away. But Macy, you were talking about how I remember we talked about how the Reed Valley customer base and the Stepping Stone customer base were kind of a little different, and they were trying to kind of figure out a way to meet both of those. Is that ringing a bell, or did I completely make
Yes,
that
no,
up?
that rings a very clear bell.
Yeah, you totally made that up, Brent. Yeah, no.
So Reed Valley has obviously been established a lot longer than Stepping Stone, and that crowd that goes there is very different than the Stepping Stone crowd. So the Stepping Stone crowd is kind of the younger generation. And then I was talking to her, she's appealing to like those young mothers that are putting food first for their families, that want to get their kids out and get immersed in nature and different things like that. So she's looking at these young generations, these young families, to kind of get out and get involved in agriculture. And the point of Stepping Stone is to get education to those who don't really understand how their food is produced or harvested or where it comes from. So that was kind of her pushing point with Stepping Stone. Whereas whenever she adopted Reed Valley, she already had that initial customer base. So she had to find a way to basically separately manage Reed Valley and Stepping Stone. And the Reed Valley is managed quite differently than Stepping Stone whenever you're kind of looking at those generational changes. So at Stepping Stone, there's a small fee that gets you admitted and is able to cover some of your activities there. Whereas at Reed Valley, those customers didn't have that. So she chose not to implement that admission fee, just to kind of respect those initial customers that were already there, which I thought was great. And was something that she was just able to kind of look and see and she was able to prioritize based on each farm, which I thought was very beneficial for her in the long run.
Orchards are kind of neat in the state any which way, in that they tend to be a little bit larger operations. So the business considerations of those are a little bit different. They're perennial crops instead of annual crops. The orchards to me are really, really just fascinating around the state. And in extension, we're able to visit with a lot of those folks. And just like farmers markets, they're each just a little bit different. And even within the same county of Bourbon County, Reed's was a lot different than Stepping Stone. But it's just fascinating how they're organized, what the mission is, and what the end goal is, and everything from that to which crops that they grow. It's just always interesting, the stories behind these orchards that we have in the state. Fascinating business operations for sure.
Yeah, that one's a pretty unique, situation. I mean, really, really cool, because they were able to be so close to reeds, right?
Yeah.
And to keep reeds going, and to be such a diversified farm so quickly.
Yeah.
And because they were doing traditional ag, weren't they? Like,
Yeah,
Ray's worked with them, and I feel like they're
that
still doing
family
some of
still
that.
is. Yeah, there still is. I mean, that's the backbone of the operation for the new owners for Stepping Stone. They are very much involved in lots and lots of acres of traditional ag, but they decided to diversify into a very complex area, being orchards. But the reason I think that made that possible, and after having talked to Brandon and Allie and Hannah and Dana and Trudy a lot, is I think that what made that possible is I was very concerned when I knew that Reeds were going to be retiring. I was like, oh no, we're going to be losing an orchard. I was just concerned because there's such neat operations and such important horticulture operations in Kentucky. I think what made that possible, that transition, is just you had that knowledge base with the Reeds. And once the Reeds agreed to work with the new ownership, it was a done deal because I think they quickly recognized that they absolutely had to have that specialized knowledge. And Dane and Trudy still help out there. They're still there. They're still with the new operation. So, and that's unusual when you have such a complex operation. A lot of times that would have never transitioned. It just would have ended. But in this case, it didn't. It morphed into a whole other thing. And it's so cool. And they still use components of the Reed Valley plantings because they're established plantings. I mean, the trees didn't all get cut down magically. That didn't happen. So there's still certain events, I guess, in their Macy. Did they mention that there's still certain events out at Reed Valley? I think it's Reed Valley Stepping Stone now, but I think the long-term goal is to bring everything over at Stepping Stone once they get their, all of their apples and peach plantings up and going. Both super neat operations. Yeah, you worked with two really, really good ones for sure. When you got to talk with those folks.
Ray, can you expand just a little? You talk about the complexity of the operation, and I think I know what you mean, but would you mind to expand on that?
Well, once again, anytime you're dealing with perennial crops, it's way, way different than annual crops. Vegetables and the way we manage things like strawberries, we even manage those as an annual crop now. But when you're talking about crops, first of all, like, apple trees that you're going to have for multiple years, the considerations are different. The cash flow is different. The upfront investment's going to be a little higher. The payback's going to be a little longer. But not only that, is you have an operation that has a lot of intensity here in Kentucky in zone 6 and 7. We have to spray for things like insects and diseases quite often. So you have to manage, things like that. And the labor is always an issue on places like orchards where there's a lot of intensity of management and lots of labor needed. So they're just more complicated because of the cash flow models that they're under. And a lot of orchards that I've seen, most of the orchards around the state have a farm store component. So you have this, a lot of times, a wholesale component, but you also have this heavy, heavy retail component of those operations. So you're managing a lot of times both systems, wholesale and retail, and then sometimes everything in between, like schools. So when you talk about an orchard, you talk about an operation that hits at multiple marketing levels and involves a lot of labor. So just, out of necessity, it's just a more complex operation, especially when you have retail outlets on the farm. And anytime you talk about an agritourism venture, most orchards, have an agritourism component, especially like Stepping Stone. Macy, you mentioned that they do public outreach and education. I mean, once you add in all those components, how many hours are left in the day, or are there any hours left in the day? So that's what I meant by the complexity of operations. It's all there on orchards. They're a great case study if you're wanting to get a sample of what horticulture really is, versus traditional like row crop agriculture. There are lots of similarities, but there are also lots of contrast. And in the case of the Stepping Stone family farm that they have there now, that component, they do both traditional ag and a very advanced horticulture operation. So they're involved in everything. I told Brandon, I was like, you're crazy. I said the complexity of that, but they're doing it. They get it done. They already had one thing that made it also very, very possible. They had a well-established, maintained labor base for their traditional ag operations. And he said that was also very critical in, getting that farm up and going. Not only the knowledge of the reeds, but they had labor. So they had those two critical things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things you're talking about there in general within the way that horticulture unfolds in Kentucky, and Macy's talked about it quite a bit so far, but I want to get her impressions on this. Is that sometimes the direct marketing, because the volume of sales might be a little smaller, or the venue is a little smaller, or whatever it may be. Sometimes the complexity of direct marketing is lost on people, that they think that a farmer's market, or selling directly to consumers, whether that be on farm or otherwise, is is sort of like the beginner's marketing, and then once you're advanced, then you do wholesale. Well, I mean, wholesale, it's a different thing, but like if you have a truck back up to your farm and they load up a pallet of tomatoes and pull out, that's a very different thing from scheduling your Facebook posts, scheduling your Instagram posts, making sure you have a customer base, building an email marketing list to then hopefully draw people in to come to your farm or come to your market. Um, Deciding what varieties that you have, and merchandising at the point of sale, and managing the taking cash or credit cards or benefit cards or whatever. I'm curious, Macy, you coming from a little bit more of a traditional markets, maybe like stockyards and grain elevators and that kind of stuff. What was your impression of these crazy direct marketers at the farmers markets and at the agritourism places? And I'm just curious, what if you said it was kind of newer to you or you hadn't thought about it as much?
Yeah. It was crazy. I never realized how much went into direct marketing. I thought that it was going to be very much, okay, this is what we grew this week. This is what we're going to sell this week. This is what we're going to sell it for this week. But I quickly realized that a lot of these producers that are going to farmers markets are also selling in different markets as well. They're selling in their farm stands. They're selling a lot of people are selling to school districts now with the Kentucky school program that they have at the KDA. They're also selling to businesses and restaurants and different things like that. So being able to manage all of that at the same time is, I don't know how some of these farms are doing it. And then just the direct marketing as a whole at the farmers market, it varies a lot the by the operation that is selling it. I know that some people in Lexington that sell at the Lexington markets, they only sell organic. So they are like their marketing is completely different than another that's 2 tenths down that's not selling organic. So being able to be to have those promotions for what you're selling is very important to that Kentucky farmer to be able to get across what they want to the public to perceive.
It's a lot. You're
Yeah.
right. It's crazy. I can say, yeah, they're crazy because I'm a part of it, right? That's what I always tell people. I'm like, farmers markets are crazy. And I'm like, I can say that because I've been involved with them. But you're right. It's just from the time that season starts, it's go, go, go nonstop. And you think each week it might get easier, but a new crop comes in or you don't have a crop. Did you post on your social media to let people know what you're going to have? And then getting to the market, staying there all day, and like you said, figuring out those prices. Because just even within that market, just like the example of someone might be organic, somebody might be like low spray. We don't spray anything, but we're not officially organic, but we don't use chemicals, or just how each vendor is going to market their own things, all that goes into it, and then how it can just change each week because we were in a drought for part of the summer, right? But you might be a vendor who always traditionally has great sweet corn, but guess what? It didn't rain for a month this summer, so you might not have it, and then it might rain, and suddenly you're going to have it again, right, with your next planting. So they are crazy, and it's a never-ending process until you hope for that first hard frost, unless you have a tunnel and other stuff, and you keep going.
Having worked with producers that have, in a lot of cases, they've transitioned from the more traditional ag side. They're interested in transitioning to some horticulture endeavor, some horticulture crops. So the one thing I try to stress right up front is, I said, first of all, I mean, if I know the operation on the ag side and I realize that they haven't maybe done as much marketing because they may have cattle that they sell through a set market in Kentucky, or they just drop off, something at a grain elevator. Yes, there is some market involved in that, but I try to stress to them that you spend 100% of your time in production. On the horticulture side in Kentucky, you're usually going to spend the other 75% marketing. So you have 175% of your time dedicated. So it's real easy to underestimate the time that goes into marketing and doing a good job making the social media post, showing up and talking with people at the farmers market and giving them your farm story as part of the marketing piece. So yeah, I try to stress that for more traditional producers that are interested in doing horticulture activities. In Kentucky, at least, in most outlets in Kentucky, you're doing a lot of your own marketing, and they just have to have an appreciation for that. It takes lots of time. Takes lots of time. But I always try to stress that.
Yeah, so I think one of the main things, as we wrap up here, one of the main things that I wanted, Macy, I wanted you to experience was a little bit of a flavor of what some of the different professions around extension and around specialty crops, and yeah, what these people like us do, and other people you had the chance to meet, and chat with Sharon Spencer at KDA. You actually went down and chatted with permanent horticulture co-host Jessica Besson in Mercer County, and had some fun chatting with people around their county fair prep and other stuff like that. And so I'm just curious, as you're thinking about this experience and some of the people that you met, obviously the whole CCE team, some of the professors on campus, some of the farmers out. Where how does this impact or help you think about maybe where you want to go in the future, or is there things that you learned that you feel like you maybe will carry forward, or even just what are you think? I know I'm asking someone who's pretty early in relatively early in her college career, what do you want to do with your life? But what I'm really saying is, I guess, as you're looking forward, looking ahead, as someone who's committed to agriculture and passionate about agriculture, and now you've had this experience with horticulture, what does it have you thinking about, next steps or long-term steps, or any thoughts along those lines?
Yeah. So one thing I loved about my fellowship this summer is that I never really felt like I was an intern or that I was doing like the grunt work, like bottom of the totem pole. I kind of got a little bit of a glimpse of what the CCD kind of does and what a job there kind of looks like. So I was able to do the farmers markets report. I was able to write an extension publication. I did a social media campaign. I did all of the things that like they do in their typical day-to-day work. And that's something that I just really appreciated because I feel like where I'm at in my college career, I'm graduating in 2 years. So I need to be looking at these different kind of avenues that I want to go down. I just thought that that was really great for me to kind of get a glimpse as to what I can use my degree for. So my degree is in agriculture economics at UK, and then I also have a minor in public policy. So whenever I kind of went into that, I always tell people whenever they ask me, "What do you want to do with your life? Like, what are you doing after you graduate?" I always say, "Well, in about like 20 or so years, I want to be the commissioner of agriculture, but until then, I'm not quite sure." So this just has kind of shown me how close knit and community wise the Kentucky agriculture industry is. I already kind of got a glimpse of that with the beef industry and my whole family there. But the horticulture industry is just the same. And that is kind of what I'm trying to think of Kentucky agriculture is as well. Just a big, close knit family that looks out for each other and wants to be better and wants to push themselves to be better. So I think at the end of that big long tangent that I just had, um, essentially, I just want to help Kentucky producers in whatever way I can help them, however I can do that best. So extension is not off the table, but we're still looking around.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways to help. There's a lot of different actors who do support agriculture in Kentucky and beyond, and we're lucky to have lots of great partnerships and relationships with those people and be able to work together. I would echo, like, in addition, on the agriculture side, on this like technical assistance side, the extension, the nonprofit, the governmental. I think we have a lot of really strong relationships, and people who have come into those, found jobs here and moved here, have remarked on that to me of like, whoa, you all really like get along and work together. And it's like, well, we're small and stubborn together, I guess. And so it's been a real privilege for me to be able to work with you this summer. I want to give another thank you to the Kentucky Horticulture Council, Dr. Cindy Finiseth, that made this experience possible. I really look forward to wherever you decide your next steps in agriculture are, or wherever your next steps are, to following along on your journey. But I really appreciate you joining us here today. I don't have Alexis's outro memorized, but it's something like, we hope that as you grow this podcast, you'll grow with us, or something like that. I don't know.
Something. Yeah.
Alexis will be back to get us back on our on task soon. But thank you again so much, Macy, both for joining us today and for all your work this summer. And I'll just leave us there.